Do philanthropy and entrepreneurship go hand in hand? And why are so many people typically, once people pass a certain wealth stage, they engage in philanthropy? Gary Woodhead, do you have an answer to that question?
Hi, Asger. It's a very interesting question, especially when you talk about people beyond certain wealth levels becoming ridiculously deep with philanthropy. You know, you look at Bill Gates, Warren Buffett,
Yeah.
richest people on the planet that have basically said, sod the family, everything is going to charity.
Right.
And I suppose it boils down to your morals and principles in life. I'm from a working background, come from a family which, you know, literally did the 9 to 5 their entire lives, had very little money.
Right.
And I'm still not materialistic as an entrepreneur, as a dad, as a family man. And I personally enjoy giving more than trying to accumulate wealth.
Right.
As an example, 2 years ago, when I started the entrepreneurial path in my life where I quit the 915, I actually maxed out a credit card to buy 60 sleeping bags for the homeless.
Right. I was going to ask you, but I remember you mentioned that in passing. Right. Please. What happened? How did that play out?
It was an amazing. To me, it felt one of the biggest and nicest things I'd ever done in my life, and that ignited the philanthropy element in my business, Curve Block, which basically helps the masses with passive income, but ultimately donates significant amounts to charities across the world. And it's the community that we allow to choose the charities. I don't pick them, so it's not me dictating where this philanthropy element goes. It's actually the community. But yeah, I being in the UK, I'd rather die with a knighthood than the Ferrari, just for doing some good in this crazy ass world that we all live in.
Right. But that so would it be fair to say that that's what drives you even?
I suppose behind it as well is I am a family guy. So it's the nice things in life, you know, doing for your family and doing good for outside of your family.
Right. Okay. So for those who didn't come here from In It for the Money, from my other channel called In It for the Money, but for those who just stumbled on this video, who are you again, real quick?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm Gary Woodhead. I'm the CEO of a company called Curve Block. You can find us on curveblock.io on the web, and it's basically we develop real estate. We share the dividends with the masses, and every development, 5% of the profits go to charity. So just to give you an example, the first 3 developments is 134,000 Great British Pound from those projects alone that will go to charity. And it will It will only take literally within the first 2 years, we'll be into 7 figures donated to charity through that project.
Right. That's very impressive, and I love the fact that this is something I've given a great deal of thought to, because I've always had the aspiration to make the world a better place, I guess, in a broad sense, but probably also some more specific things, but that's a topic for another video. But this realization that the best way of doing that is actually not necessarily volunteering in soup kitchens and stuff like that.
I suppose it comes in different formats.
It comes in different formats, but if you start thinking, like, obviously when you run a business, you're thinking strategically long term about that, right? So that's obvious, but it's not obvious that, well, if I want to help as many people as possible, how do I think strategically long term about that? right? Because helping others is typically an emotionally motivated phenomenon. So I think there's just a very beautiful and cynical and yet empathetic synergy going on in that space where you actually manage to take a step back and remove yourself emotionally from helping others, from doing good, and you say, okay, so how do we look at doing good as if it was a business in and of its own? How do we do as much good as possible, right?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, out of doing what we're doing, it's kind of trying to make an impression to, I suppose, other businesses and other people around the world.
Right.
Imagine, this is a crazy thought, but imagine a world where every business on the planet actually gave 5% of their profits to charity. We would live in a completely different world.
Completely different, right?
Just 5%. We're not asking them to, give all the profits away. Just 5%. It's nothing in the whole scheme of things. But collectively, a collective human mass doing all the same. Yeah, it's beyond belief. Will it ever happen? Probably not. But it's just great to try and set that seed and hope it catches with others.
Right, I know other companies do it too, of course, and I guess which ironically, especially in the U.S., like for some companies, I think it's a pure taxation thing. It's simply favorable for them to do it from a tax-paying point of view. So that's right. There are certain mechanisms in play, but again, legislation can change. I think you're right that like this, if this fundamental structure could spread to around the world, that would be a fascinating thing, right?
Yeah, it'd be something never seen before.
It definitely would, yeah. So I asked you what is your favorite book, and you wrote, I think you wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad. Is
right?
That correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Did you read that a while back or recently?
I have it on audio, so that basically I can still work and leverage a book without having to physically extract myself from my daily role to read. I just think it's such a simplistic book, but it's a book that I think would benefit anybody to read it, whether it's your 10-year-old kid, or a friend who's a grown adult. It's just got such basic fundamentals in it, but such basic fundamentals that would change so many lives if people actually read the book.
Right. He did write a follow-up book for teenagers, I believe.
Yes, Sam Ledson did the book for
You need to grab that for your kids, right?
Yeah. It's.
Right? But you're right. It's amazing, and once you fully wrap your mind around that, the financial literacy, I guess, I don't know if I'm stealing that term from him, but it's a real thing.
Yeah. People do not understand assets and liabilities. An asset puts money in your pocket, a liability takes money out of your pocket. People do not understand the concept, and they effectively entrap themselves in the 9-to-5 rat race, literally until they die. What everyone's programmed at school to do, get your grades, get a job, die.
And it's a logic that you can track it back in time, right? You can. I think, I don't know, it's been a while. I've never read the whole book. I actually downloaded the audiobook when I got your response. I was like, oh my god, I never got around to, I never finished Rich Dad Poor Dad, so I just ordered the audiobook as well. So
yeah, and it also, I think it also eliminates the old, there's this reality with a lot of people where you need to be really intelligent to earn, passive income, own assets. And the book, obviously it's a true story, and that's the complete opposite, because the guy who actually makes all the money is the uneducated guy.
Right.
The guy who actually doesn't make all the money is the guy with all the education.
Right.
So that is an eye-opener as well, because so many people think they'll never be capable of it because of the schooling, and that's completely the opposite of what's in the book.
Right. I agree with that. It is of course complicated. I'm not calling myself a financial expert, right? But the basic gist of money management is something that has really dawned on me over the past 3, 4, 5 years, something like that. But it's amazing. It's amazing how you can. I guess that's the point I was trying to make before. That you could track it back, and you can see, well, back in the 50s, this system really made sense, and even in the 60s and in the 70s, and to some degree also in the 80s and maybe even the 90s.
Yeah.
But then it stopped making sense somewhere along the road, probably gradually rather than suddenly, but. Even so, it is kind of sad. Can you explain to the viewers, or just to me maybe, what's the simplest way we can how does he define it, Robert? What's his name? Kiyosaki. Yeah. How does he coin it? What's the issue?
That people basically have, they do not understand, to have a liability, you realistically should have an asset behind it that pays for the liability.
Right.
So basically, instead of rushing out and buying a car and then, oh, how the hell do I pay for it? It goes into the principles of, you need an asset to purchase a liability, so that you're always cash positive.
Right.
I
guess it could be mentioned that so I'm a psychology major, so I can't help thinking, well, there's the marshmallow experiment that you may have heard of, but I don't remember the guy who performed it, but it's been repeated multiple times. But you basically take kids and you offer them either a marshmallow here and now, or if they can wait 10 minutes, they can have 2.
Yes,
right?
The delay of gratification.
Right, delay of gratification. But it's a very, very scary predictor of long-term success in life. And there's like a huge chunk of the kids that are incapable of delay of gratification that end up with drug addiction and just a criminal record and all sorts of ailments. And I'm not saying if a person is that type of person that you can't change. Obviously you can, but I can't help thinking that some of this has to do with an individual's basic characteristics, or whatever you want to call it, personality, maybe even this financial illiteracy. So you could educate people, but they might make the same choices irregardless, right? Because if you want a car and it has a price tag, it's just a very basic and natural thing. Okay, so that's the price of it, right? But it's really not. There are a lot of hidden costs, and so there's the ability to it's a quite advanced metacognition processes, series of processes that goes into understanding that, well, a little bit down the road, which is a weird metaphor when we're talking about a car, but a lot of other expenses could develop, right? And I need to, and not just with a car, and that goes for assets too, right? Some assets become liabilities, and sometimes the other way around, I guess.
Yeah.
Right. All right. I guess I'm sidetracking us a little bit here, but and so we already touched on this, but if I ask you what motivates you, let's say on a daily basis, what would be the
primary? The primary is my family.
Yeah. Right.
Without a doubt, the missus and the children. It puts a spring in your step. It makes you keep going, whether you fail forward. It's my biggest driver. And then obviously there's the business element, which has the philanthropy aspect behind it, which is obviously the secondary driver beyond the family. Obviously, I need to feed my own before I can feed others, but collectively, they're the two.
Right, that makes sense. But so let's look at this ultimately. What is your big dream or big goal? And let me hear your answer to that question.
The big dream is the scale of behind the business and what we're doing. We effectively could become the world's largest donator to charities within the real estate development sector, which is, it's a crazy thought.
It is a crazy thought.
I'll certainly enjoy dying trying to do it. Yeah, it's the numbers. The numbers prove it on paper. It's there in plain sight. So it's the enjoyment of that challenge of the end vision.
Right. So tell me about this. I think you mentioned a little while back that you about 2 years ago you decided to start walking the entrepreneurial path, or however you want to put it, right? But was that a completely new thing to you, or had you done something like that in the past?
No. Yes, I've always been entrepreneurial in the mindset. So I spent nearly 20 years building a multi-million pound company, which was on the brink of going bust when I first stepped in. Basically became a victim of our own success. So we took this company on the brink of closure, made it into a multi-million pound, very, very profitable company. Right. And we broke nearly 100 years worth of sales records. And this was during the 2008 recession.
Right.
We grew the company over 4,000%. And on the back of that, some investors came in and bought the company and said, "Great job, there's the door."
Really?
And I was like, what? And apparently it's a common thing when investment companies take over companies, they will roll out the staff and bring in their own staff. So we were victims of our own success. And
but you would think with a track record like that, you would think that didn't happen.
No, the problem is corporate entities do not want entrepreneurial thinkers. Right. They want systems to make profit, not people.
Right, and in many cases they want to streamline it, and they're basically, this is a weird term to use about this, but they're basically looking to flip it, right?
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, basically. Right. But they want a system where it's a system that makes the money and not the people. So the people are cannon fodder, and you're just a number, and you can be replaced, and it doesn't affect the company.
Right.
So after that occurred, that was nearly 20 years of my life, and I just basically said, never again. I'm going to do this for myself this time and go do some good in the world off the back of it.
Right. But it's really interesting to me. So when you decided to start the journey with your own company, right? Was it like you said you already in spirit were already an entrepreneur, but okay, let me rephrase this. It was quite a wake up call to me, because I've always had these dreams, and I've started many companies over the years. Some of them half-heartedly, I'll admit that, but some of them were not. But I've realized over the past few years, especially after having moved to the US, where there's more competition, I guess. Yeah. And people will tell you, at least someone will tell you, you're an idiot, or whatever they tell you, right? And you're like, okay, maybe I should pay heed to what these people are saying, even though they're rude and stuff, right? But it's just the whole looking at yourself and realizing that I'm actually not mentally prepared for this. I'm not mentally geared for success right now. I'm not saying I'm not right now. I do feel like I am at this point in time, but it's been a long process to arrive at this stage. Is that something you can relate to, or how did you go about that? It strikes me that you have a big network and mentors and stuff like that.
Yeah, which I hacked. I hacked into. After this happened, I had a long period of, the psychological aspect of what do I do? Where do I go? How do I attack this? So I just dived deep into how do I hack this system. Started reading, started educating myself deeper beyond anything I already knew, and I suppose it's the old saying of don't become the sixth. So hang around with 5 alcoholics, you'll become the sixth.
Right.
Hang around with 5 negative people, you'll become the sixth. And so on the back of kind of retraining myself to leave the 9-while-5 rat race and step into the entrepreneurial world, although I'd kind of been doing that in that job role.
Right.
The growth hacks are, educate yourself on a daily, weekly basis, whether that's with books, or just perusing the web with really, really clever things to study on. Obviously mentoring, stepped into the mentoring, never had a mentor in my life. So I stepped into those circles and then started to build out my network. But basically anything negative was pushed out of my life. And I basically only chose to associate around good people, whether they were experts in business, whether they were, great philanthropists. So I kind of reinvented myself.
Right. You have to. Really have to do that.
Yeah. I mean, your eyes are in the front of your head for one reason, and that's to look. Right. It's true. It's to look forward and not backwards.
That is true. Yeah.
And there's no point in spending years being bitter about what's happened in the past. Move forward.
Who said that looking back will make your neck hurt? Talk along those lines of thinking, right? But it's interesting. It's interesting, and there are so many ways. There are so many aspects to it. It was probably one of the first things I started noticing, because I'm a language major, right? From Denmark, but so I started realizing, okay, so it actually matters how people use words, and it's really interesting, especially when I talk to other businessmen and women, or entrepreneurs, or people who want to be entrepreneurs, etc. But just to hear how they frame things with their language. Sometimes I'm just listening. I'm like, yeah, you're not going to do that. I can tell you right now, you're not going to do that, because you're giving your subconscious thoughts about this away by the way, via the way you're saying it. I can tell you're not there yet.
Yeah.
You are, though, on the other hand, Gary. You just sat there and said that it might even be the biggest real estate development company in the world, right? That is so bold. It's so bold, and I love it.
Yeah, I think is it due to the programming of schooling? Possibly. I'm not a big believer in how children are schooled, and I don't think it's done correctly. Too many people didn't attempt the dream because of that pre-programming. Why?
I think what you're talking about there that is definitely worse especially in Northern Europe.
Yeah.
It is a very real thing. It does exist in the US as well, but it is a game changer when you step off the plane over here and you suddenly don't have that anymore.
Yeah, there's no reason why nobody can't achieve anything if they put the heart and soul into it, in my opinion.
I could talk on for ages with you, and luckily I'm sure we'll talk again soon. And I always do the people the courtesy of leaving a link of their choice on this channel. So where do you want to send people?
Yeah, if they want to have a look at the company Curve Block, just Google curveblock.io, and you can see the good in the world that we're aiming to do, i.e. the passive income for the masses and the charitable element of that. So go take a peek. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you, Asger.
Thank you, Gary.
By the way, I bought your book on Audible.
Right. Yeah, it's you I'm sure you love it. The guy who reads it, he's from the UK, and he's it's not exactly the Queen reading it, but I really he's just awesome. If you ever write a book, I'll pass him your way. He's a fantastic reader.
That's been good. Thank you, Asger.
Yeah, thank you. And for everyone watching, stay tuned for more spiritual capitalism.